Sri Lanka is one of the most sought-after tourist spots in South Asia. With its stunning tourist spots and several UNESCO-approved World Heritage Sites like the sacred city of Anuradhapura, Sinharaja Forest Reserve, and Central Highlands of Sri Lanka, it's a tropical wonderland. No doubt, Sri Lanka's breathtaking beaches, towering mountains, tea plantations, and ancient temples make this country a globetrotter's paradise. Apart from Sri Lanka, Maldives and Bali are two of the most hyped tourist destinations for an island adventure. If you compare them, these two places are doing better than Sri Lanka in the tourism sector in 2022. For instance, over 1 million tourists visited Maldives by August 2022, whereas Indonesia had over 500,000 tourists by the same timeframe. Compared to that, Sri Lanka had only 458,670 international tourists as of July 2022, which is significantly lower than its neighboring counterparts. Now, the question arises, why is this happening? Well, unfortunately, Sri Lanka faced the direst economic crisis in 2022 since its independence in 1948. Followed by the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. This crisis caused a downfall in the country's tourism industry. Now, you might wonder if Sri Lanka is safe to travel to in 2022. With the economic and political unrest, the pearl of the Indian Ocean is on the verge of instability and a nationwide crisis. So, would you pick Sri Lanka as your next travel destination? Let's find out if it's worth the risk or not by looking at the tourism scenario and the reasons why you shouldn't travel to Sri Lanka now. From being a center point of major tourist attractions to going through the economic crisis in 2022, Sri Lanka has become a travel destination worth questioning and debating over. It all roots back to 2019. As per DW News, in 2019, a dreadful terrorist group orchestrated a bomb blast on Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka. This attack ended up killing more than 250 people, negatively impacting the arrival of tourists and causing a 70% slump. Per the New York Times, Sri Lanka's disruption at the beginning of 2022 showcases the world's uprising problems. In 2020, COVID disrupted the country's major industries, particularly tourism. Then leaders failed to adapt, which resulted in economic calamities, including food and fuel shortages. This crisis prompted protests, causing the president's resignation and the new president's installation. Naturally, Sri Lanka's crisis has been the center point of concern worldwide. Given the country's unfortunate circumstances, it's evident that traveling there may not be the wisest thing to do amidst this predicament. However, there's a positive side to visiting an inflation-stricken country for tourists from developed countries. As locals struggle to purchase necessities with local currency due to the higher prices, tourists from foreign lands can bridge the gap by purchasing at a higher price point to help the local producers. It will eventually be an addition to the revival of Sri Lanka's battling economy. On a broader spectrum, this nation's economy needs a significant boost, but it won't be possible without reviving its tourism. However, what guarantees you will be safe if you plan your vacation in Sri Lanka? Let's dig deeper. Sri Lanka's tourism industry has been suffering since 2019 after a threatening bombing incident. In December 2021, Sri Lanka's tourism revenue reached $507 million compared to $682 million in 2020. However, if you take a step back to 2018, you will be surprised to know that its tourism revenue reached a whopping all-time high of $4.3 billion. This shows a pattern of negative impact due to the post-pandemic dilemma. In addition, the declining numbers of tourists played a part here. The Research and International Relations Division at Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority presented a report based on the tourist arrival in Sri Lanka during September 2022.
In light of that, 29,802 tourists arrived in September, which shows the number has fallen by almost 21% compared to August 2022.
Most tourists came from India, the United Kingdom, and Australia, followed by Germany and Russian Federation. Despite the decrease in tourist arrival, Sri Lanka is hopeful about reviving its tourism industry with an inflow of foreign currency. According to Asia Times, tourism can be crucial in helping the country escape its economic disruption. As a comparison of tourist arrival in 2022 shows that Sri Lanka had fewer tourists than that of Maldives and Bali, it clearly affected the revenue generated from tourism. In 2021, Maldives generated over USD 3.5 billion from tourism. Maldives Monetary Authority's annual report showed that tourist revenue increased by 148% in 2021 compared to 2020. In terms of Bali, you will be shocked to know that this world-famous island had only 51 foreign tourists in 2021. According to Statista, it was the lowest number of visitors in decades, and the drastic slump was caused by the coronavirus pandemic, which had paralyzed the tourism sector in Bali. However, Bali recovered it by 2022. For reference, in September 2022, Bali had 291,162 visits, which increased the rate from August 2022 by 5.24%. An economic crisis can be a solid reason to avoid traveling a country in its entirety. Sri Lanka is no exception in this case. Despite the crisis and downfall in the tourism industry, Sri Lanka is hoping to boost its tourism sector with some crucial steps. As per Ceylon Today, an integrated 5-year global communication camp, GCC, is aiming to attract 6 million tourists and USD 10 billion in revenue by 2025 despite the challenges of post-COVID and the ongoing economic crisis. The campaign focuses on some key points like improving travelers' confidence, understanding and tracking new market trends and the drivers of demand, and building more resilient and inclusive tourism sectors. For example, during COVID-19, North America tourism focused on the safety of travelers by reducing customer touchpoints by using robotics, automation, and self-service kiosks. They also embrace artificial intelligence for tourism operations. As the national crisis in Sri Lanka gave rise to frequent power cuts and fuel shortages, it's not conducive to tourists who get easily bothered by the lack of power supply. The country faced 10 to 13 hours of power cuts daily at the beginning of the crisis. But thanks to hydroelectricity, it has been reduced to 1 hour from September 2022, according to Economy Next. However, BBC said it increased to 140 minutes because of a drop in power generating capacity by the end of the same month. Per Reuters, Sri Lanka has hit hopes of a post-pandemic recovery as the tourism industry struggles to revive itself with declining visitor numbers. Whereas once it contributed to 5.6% to the country's GDP. Therefore, in case you do travel, you better keep the power shortage in mind and have some backup ready. When interviewed, existing tourists from Sri Lanka suggest carrying power banks if you want to travel against all adversities. Because fuel shortage means there will be delays in reaching tourist spots that require large vehicles or small tuk-tuks because public transportation has been limited or diminished. Food crisis is another plight for the struggling Sri Lankans. According to BBC, food prices in Sri Lanka rose by 84.6% in 2022 compared to 2021. The United Nations World Food Programme and Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations reported that an estimated 6.3 million people in Sri Lanka are facing moderate to severe food insecurity. Sadly, their situation will be worse if adequate life-saving assistance and livelihood support are not provided. As far as safety is concerned, a traveler has to be careful to avoid crowded places. With the ongoing protests in Sri Lanka, it's not safe to gather around crowded public spots without precautions. Though the protests have waned by October 2022 compared to the beginning of the same year, tourists need to check with safety concerns to avoid anything uncalled for. Although reports may vary, many travelers experience nothing out of the ordinary while they visit the mountains, temples, and beaches, as the protests are mainly focused on the larger cities. That means safety can be ensured with proper precautions. Overall, if you want to look at the broader picture, a country's economic crisis does not mean that you should not travel there. And Sri Lanka is no exception, given how beautiful of a tourist destination it is. Nonetheless, it totally depends on the sort of traveler you consider yourself to be. If you're confident enough to survive extreme power and fuel scarcity and want to contribute to its tourism revival, Sri Lanka can be your destination despite the circumstances.
On the contrary, if you're not up for challenges you will face in this crisis-stricken country, you should avoid Sri Lanka until its situation improves in the near future.
To wrap it all up, we believe Sri Lanka needs help from tourists from all over the world. What do you think? Are you willing to travel to Sri Lanka? Let us know and feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. And if you enjoyed our video, stay with us for more travel updates. Thank you!